Did you know that 63% of men under the age of 30 would describe themselves as single? And 65% of single women say they're no longer seeking a romantic relationship or casual dates. That number's even higher for women over the age of 40, 71%. So in this episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about this loneliness epidemic. And it's aimed a bit at the men, but it's probably good advice for everyone. How to stop being so boring so that people find you more interesting. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Life. As a coach, and I do career coaching and leadership coaching, I do some business coaching, and even a bit of life coaching. I talk with a lot of people, and they are in various relationship situations. What do they call that now? A situationship? I don't know. What's the cool lingo for that? I'm too old to know it. But they're in various types of situations and dealing with various issues. Some are married with children. A few are divorced. Looking to get back into dating or starting to date again. Some people have said, you know what? No, I'm happily single. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And I'm happy to spend time with myself and my friends and travel the world and do whatever. And then there are some that are sadly single. So they are single and they wish they could date, or they're having trouble dating. And it is more challenging, I would say. It's kind of weird. When I was growing up, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have dating apps, we didn't have all that stuff. And so finding people to date was very much an in-person kind of thing. It's like, who did you meet at school? Who did you work with? Who do your friends know that they could introduce you? And so you'd ask people out in person and you'd ask out over the phone. We didn't have the whole swipe to show your interest. So it's a lot more pressure. You had to be a lot more confident. It was a lot more intimidating. And there have been, some years where I think there's been an explosion of dating services and dating apps. And I think initially people probably thought, well, this is amazing. There's an endless sea of people that I can browse and I can select and I can swipe and show interest. And if they happen to show it back, then wow, we're a match. I don't have to put myself out there and be afraid of rejection. Anyway, but what I'm hearing is that lots of people are burned out. They are burned out with using the various dating apps. They've deleted them off their phones and they're taking a break. And I'm sure you've probably seen some of the nightmare chats that many women experience in the dating world. And I guess I'm talking a lot about men and women dating because that's my experience. I don't have a lot of experience with other kinds of dating. But they share it on social media. You see it online. You hear it from friends. And apparently, because of all this, a significant percentage of people overall, but especially women, have given up on dating altogether. Those are some big numbers. 63% of men, 65% of women who are saying, hey, not only am I single, I just don't want to do this anymore. So I'd say the advice I'm going to share in this episode applies to anyone really. But I guess I was thinking more about the men because I'm a man and I have sons and I have a lot of male friends. So I know what they're going through. And I've heard the stories of the horrible dating experiences and relationship experiences from the women in my life and the women I know, my friends and coworkers and so forth. Colleagues, I guess I should say. I'm a solopreneur, so I don't work in an office anymore. I shared a link to an account called Ask Aubrey. It's on Blue Sky. But boy, oh boy, she shares screenshots that people submit of their chats, whether it's through a dating app or other messaging services. And so it's no wonder that so many men are having trouble dating and having trouble finding long-term partners. if you look at these chats, and I encourage you to do that, go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me.me. This is Stop Being So Boring, issue 136. Not surprising if this is the way they're talking. It seems like they have themselves to blame. I shared a screenshot in the associated article for this podcast where a guy posted, like he's looking into the sky and thinking, he said, I got a job at a library, but it only lasted 15 minutes. Turns out books about women's rights shouldn't go in the sci-fi fantasy section. Wow, what a funny guy, huh? Hilarious. I would imagine that this person is probably single, and I wonder why. It's like, yeah, you can't behave like that and think that people are going to be lining up to date you or even be friends with you. It's like, come on, give me a break. So I'm friends with some men and I coach some men who are struggling with the loneliness epidemic. And if you do your research, this is a huge problem. I think there is a global epidemic of loneliness in general. I think a lot of people are feeling lonely, and some of that is because of the way the world has changed over the decades that we've been growing up with technology and the migration, I think, of people moving from their hometowns to other locations, small towns to cities, city to city, even moving to other countries for work. There's been a lot of that. I did. I grew up in the Midwest and went to school in Texas and then moved to California. And so, we don't have any family here at all. And the friends I had growing up and the friends in college and so forth, they're nowhere nearby. They're scattered all over the country and all over the world. And they do say that it gets harder to make friends as you get older. I've noticed that. Maybe not for everybody, but I'm a bit of an introvert, so it's hard. We lived in the Bay Area of California for over 20 years, and I had friends from work and stuff, but then we moved. So where we are, it's like starting over again, and I'm a solopreneur now, so I mostly work at home. So yeah, I don't have a lot of friends up here and people I do stuff with. I have people I talk with online, but it's not quite the same. So I do most of my activities, hiking and skiing and camping and all the stuff we do. I do that with my wife and with my children if they come back to visit. So yeah, this loneliness epidemic is real. And if you look at the data, it seems to be more pronounced with men. It seems that men, especially as they get older, tend to have fewer friendships and do fewer things with friends. They focus on work and they do other stuff, but they really are pretty lonely. And there's definitely a problem with younger men now. They talk about the incel movement. So the men who classify themselves as involuntary celibates. And they're angry. They're sad about it. They're bitter. They're angry. They're wondering why no one seems interested and why they are struggling to date. And some of it, I'm going to go into a little more detail, is it's behavior, it's attitude. It's not surprising if people don't want to date you if you're acting like a pretty horrendous person. But some of it is just people not really investing in themselves. You have to be an interesting person for people to be interested in you. And I know that sounds, I don't want to know if that sounds harsh, but I think very few people are inherently, naturally interesting people. Maybe some of the extroverts and people that live these amazing lives. I think the rest of us, if we're a little shy, a little introverted, it's a little more challenging. But I'm definitely seeing it with people who, and especially the men, I'll call this out, that aren't really investing in themselves to become an interesting potential partner. So I hear about this problem from the men, but I hear about it from women too. I hear about it from people that I'm related to, from friends, from colleagues, clients, you name it. Modern dating is a nightmare for them, as I kind of mentioned earlier. And if you look at Ask Aubrey, I encourage you to go check out her account and scroll through some of the stuff. you're going to be shocked. But yeah, you see this where, and I hear these stories where there are men who expect something in return if they buy you dinner or they buy you gifts. It's ridiculous. And this has been going on for a long time. It's like, oh, I bought you a drink. You should dance with me. I bought you dinner. You should come home with me. I remember a situation where a man had purchased a gift, maybe multiple gifts for someone, and the young lady was like, hey, I don't feel comfortable accepting the gift. And they said, oh, no strings attached. I just thought you'd enjoy it. Well, lo and behold, a couple weeks later, I asked her out, and she said, oh, I'm not really interested in dating. It's like, I bought you a gift. Guys, stop doing that. Horrible behavior. With the dating apps, they kind of encourage this. It's a bunch of selfish dudes who just want to hook up. They don't want a relationship. They just want a one-night stand. And I know sometimes parties are mutually interested in that, and that's great. But if someone's looking to have a real relationship or something that can turn into something a little more meaningful, and they're not on an app that encourages that. And some of the apps are much more geared towards long-term relationships and marriage and so forth. And the dudes will still just try to hook up. It's like, no wonder they're having trouble getting women to go out with them. Men who treat women like objects, right? They don't respect them as humans. They don't make friends with them. They just think of them as sexual objects, which, yeah, big surprise. Someone doesn't want to spend time with you. Then there's the dudes that don't want to do anything other than, game or watch sports. I know somebody that was trying to get a guy to go out and do stuff in the real world, and they're always wanting to just, jump on the game console and game all weekend, stay inside, and this bored the other person to tears. They're like, this is not interesting for me. Or if they're not into sports, it's like, I'm not going to stay home and watch football all weekend. This is boring. So it's, yeah, no wonder you're struggling to date if you're behaving like that. Then you have the men who just can't be honest about what they're doing as they're dating. They're dating multiple partners at once, and they're not telling everybody. You can do that. It's okay to casually date and say, yeah, I'm dating. I'm not committed. I don't really want to settle down. I'm dating a few people. That's fine. Just be honest about that. But if you pretend that you're committing and dating one person at a time, but there's actually 2 or 3 other people, that's not so cool. No wonder that's a nightmare for the people that are trying to find someone to commit. And there are then the men who refuse to commit. Bunch of articles about this, the Peter Pan syndrome that seems to be going around. They're not sure what is happening. I think people are living longer. They're feeling younger, looking younger. They have what they think are infinite number of dating partners. So that's the curse of these dating apps is they open the app and they're like, wow, there's 15,000 women in my city that I could date. So why should I settle down? Why should I commit? I'm going to keep dating and dating and dating and dating. So these men refuse to commit until the day comes when they are no longer a really attractive partner for a committed relationship. And I see that happen. There are lots of men and there are lots of people in general who need therapy. They need therapy, but they just refuse to get it. And so a lot of the issues that they have struggled with since childhood, hey, myself included, comes up again and again in relationships. And this trauma that people have experienced can cause all kinds of stuff to surface. When you're a person who's had some emotional damage and dealt with some issues, it's hard. It's hard to open up. It's hard to have a healthy relationship. This all comes out in negative ways. And so you really do, and I do recommend this, get some therapy, talk with a counselor or a psychologist, whatever works for you. There's lots of good resources that you can look for online, but work on your stuff. You got to be happy with yourself. You got to like yourself. You got to make peace with stuff before you can be a good partner in a relationship. I think that's true. And another thing that I think some men who struggle with work-life balance, I struggled with this. I worked way too much. I worked long hours. I know people that do. I still have friends who do. And it's a point of friction in their relationships. It's like they're working 12, 14-hour days, you're working weekends, they're not really available to do stuff. And it's like, how can you have a healthy dating life or relationship if you're doing nothing but work, work, work all the time? And I get it. It's a tough world we're in. You got to work hard, and it's harder than ever to make a living. I do a lot of career coaching, so I see this. But you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out, and your relationship's going to struggle if you're not available. And coming from just talking about myself, I am not saying I'm a perfect person. I'm not going to say I'm a nice guy, and you should beware of any guy who says, I'm a nice guy. No one declares they're a nice guy that's a nice guy. So I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm Mr. Nice Guy. I'm not saying I'm amazing or the most interesting man in the world. Far from it. But I did date quite a bit before I met my wife. So I have a lot of dating experience that started in high school and college and so forth. And then I met my wife in college, my last semester of college. And she is way out of my league. If you've seen our wedding photos, and I've shared those before because we've been married for over 34 years now, you'll see she was way out of my league. But I don't know. I had confidence, and I was behaving in ways that she found attractive. And I've heard from her and previous girlfriends why they went out with me, why they wanted to date me. And it came down to a few things. One is I genuinely enjoy the company of women. I'm not one of those guys that hangs out with my guy friends all the time and doesn't have women who are friends or does things with women. A lot of guys don't want to hang out with women unless they're going to date the women, which is a real shame because I think women are amazing friends. So I've always, probably, I'm trying to remember way back, and even in grade school, I had women who were friends. My mom is an amazing woman. I always enjoyed her company. She's super smart and compassionate, always gave me good advice, and she's funny. And so I grew up in a household with a loving father and a compassionate, caring father and a strong mother. And so I think that influenced who I am. I enjoy the company of women. My wife is my best friend. We do everything together. She mentioned that she noticed I was really caring with children and with animals and, her pets and so forth. She had younger brothers who were just kids, and I loved playing with them, and I genuinely did. I had fun with them. And so she noticed that and said, okay, this guy's not a serial killer. How wonderful. I tend to be a good listener. I try. That's probably why I got into coaching. I like to listen, ask questions, and I really try to help people. I've always done this. I try to help people solve their problems. And that happened a lot. That happened a lot when I was young. That happened in high school, where the girls in my class would come to me having problems with their boyfriends, and they wanted to talk to me. And so I would listen and try to solve their problems and try to figure out what was going on. So they always wanted to talk to me, and their boyfriends always kind of hated me. That was a big problem. I've always been interested in improving myself. It's kind of a weird thing that I have. I'm a little obsessive about it. I keep trying to become a better person. I do this with my physical health. I do this with, mental stuff and trying to learn stuff and, grow my business. And I'm always curious and trying to figure out how to be a better person, be better in my relationship, and listen to my wife's feedback because she knows more than I do about this. She noticed that I'm ambitious. I always have new goals. I have new personal goals, professional goals, that kind of stuff. I had a pretty decent career, got an advanced degree. I like goals. I think the last one is I love to read. I've always been a heavy duty reader. Read. And I love to learn new things. I'm kind of a nerd that way. But doing this means I always have a lot to talk about. There's a lot to discuss. So that's just a few things, but it's not some magical formula. This isn't something you're born with, and it isn't some kind of trick, but you do need to be intentional. If this doesn't come naturally for you, you need to work on yourself. People like to see someone who cares enough to work on themselves and improving themselves. You got to be a decent human being. That's kind of the baseline. If you can't be a decent human being, you're going to struggle with dating. It's just, and relationships and your marriages. And if you do all this, if you continue to work on yourself, you really care about other people, you're a decent human being, you're always trying to get better, someone's definitely going to find you interesting. You know what I mean? You're going to be an interesting person that's fun to hang out with and have conversations with. So I just wanted to share a few ideas, and this isn't a complete list, obviously, but ways that you can invest in yourself. So if you do want to cure your own loneliness, if you do want to invest in yourself, if you want to evolve as a human being, there are ways you can do this. And I know this is increasingly becoming hard for some reason, but you got to read some books. And I mean, read some books. Don't just skim an article on your phone. Read some books and then read some more. Keep reading. The people who are interesting, the people that are doing well professionally, the people that have a lot to talk about, they read. And that can be a mix of fiction and nonfiction, learning stuff, advancing yourself professionally, learning all kinds of stuff. I mean, whatever interests you and excites you, read. I have way too many books on my bookshelf. I have more books than I'll ever finish, but it's like I said, it's something that I really love, and I think it makes people interesting. Keep up with the current news. But you got to do this using some unbiased and reliable sources. So it's not going to be the far left news sources or the far right news sources or your buddies at the bar who are telling you third hand what's going on. There's a whole lot of that going on. And I'd link this. If you go to newsletter.invinciblelife.me, I've talked about this before. There are some sources that you can turn to that will give you unbiased news, or they'll tell you about the bias, and you can see both sides of an issue. It makes you interesting. It makes you informed. You can talk about stuff. If someone brings up a topic like, what do you think about what's going on in this country? And you'd be like, oh yeah, I read about that. If you never know anything that's going on, I don't know. It's kind of hard to have an interesting conversation with people like that. A big one that I'm a huge fan of is travel. I've talked about this before, but travel changes you. It changes you for the better. And it really helps to travel the world. I know that's not available for everyone, but you got to get out of your hometown. You got to get out of your state. You got to see how other people live, what the world is like. It broadens your mind. If you stay in your little hometown and you never leave, it's a little bubble. And you start to become very kind of egocentric about how you think things work. And it's a very one-dimensional way to see the world. Because when you travel, it opens up your mind to other people's lives. And that's an important one too. You got to open your mind to how other people live and their worries and loves and fears and needs. You can't be self-centered. You have to understand that, because I think as you travel and as you meet people and you are open to this, you start to have more respect for other people. You start to understand that good people are good people. And I think that's an important one too. Good people are good people, even if and especially if they are different from you. And this is where I think a lot of people struggle. This is why there's a new question that I've been reading that women will ask guys like very early as they're having a conversation, like, who did you vote for? And I'm not going to make this political, but there are some politicians and political parties that seem to hate a lot of people that are different from them. And people who are interesting and people that people want to date realize that good people are good people. I don't know. That's kind of an important one. I'm sorry. But I find it really hard, from what I'm seeing, for people to want to date you if you're racist or sexist or homophobic or transphobic. Sorry, guys. If that's who you are, prepare to spend the rest of your life alone. Anyway, another one is exploring the arts. Oh no, the arts. Visit your local museums. My wife and I went to an art museum that was pretty amazing. I mean, we had never visited it before. It was a little farther away. Well worth the drive. We spent like 3 or 4 hours there and couldn't see everything, but it changes you. It's such an amazing experience, and it gives you a lot to talk about. Go to art galleries, go to the theater, explore the arts, listen to live music. Just be a more interesting person, It really is not going to kill you to kind of round yourself out and start to see some of the stuff that is coming from independent artists and musicians and you name it. One that I think I talk about a lot, and I talk about this for my career coaching, and I talk about this for my business coaching, but I think it applies to everybody, is try to create more than you consume. I think a lot of people, especially Americans, were big consumers. There's a whole lot of time spent watching Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and playing games that someone else designed and created, doing things that other people have created, eating at restaurants where other people cook. But when you try some of this yourself, like you try writing, and I'm a big fan of morning journaling, for example, and I've written some books and I've written poetry. I've done all that kind of stuff. Try writing, try creating art, sketching, painting, watercolors, whatever. Make music, play guitar, sing, whatever. It does something. It gives back to the world in ways that reveal your soul because you put yourself into it. It's vulnerable and it's scary, but it changes you. It changes you to not just take in, but to give back. Anyway, it's something that you could try. I also recommend always spending more time in nature, right? But while respecting nature. Man, I get so angry. I spend a lot of time hiking, and we do a lot of skiing and camping and so forth. And we find trash on the trail all the time. We find all kinds of horrible stuff. But it's like, if you immerse yourself in nature and you really pay attention to it, it changes you, it deepens you, refreshes you, recharges you. It's something that you can do with people. It's fun to go hiking with people or trail running or skiing, whatever it is, but showing that the respect, because we only get one planet, folks. We only get one planet. We got to take care of it. And people like people that respect the planet. Sorry. If you trash the planet, don't be surprised if people don't want to spend time with you. Invest in yourself in terms of your health and your wellness. And that kind of includes everything. That's physical, mental, and emotional. I've talked about this so much that, it started probably 17 years ago where I reinvested in my physical health. I started working out. I started eating better. Lost like 40 pounds, gained a bunch of muscle thanks to CrossFit and weightlifting. And I still try to lift weights every day. We go trail running, we go hiking, we do walks, we ski in the winter. And again, it shows that you care about yourself. It's kind of cool to see somebody who's capable. And this doesn't mean you have to have six-pack abs or take a bunch of steroids and become like that, because then, if you become a little too absorbed, that's also not so attractive. But investing in yourself and being capable, that's attractive. Investing in your mental health, I talked about getting therapy, makes you an interesting person. It makes you balanced. You can have healthy relationships. Investing in your emotional health, whatever it takes, whether that's therapy, it's creating art, listening to music, spending time in nature. I do this. I know I need to invest in my emotional health every day. And I can tell when my battery is getting low, so I do that. And it makes me a better partner for my wife, And then finally, I kind of mentioned this already, but stop hating people just because they look different, they love differently, they worship differently, they live differently. There are people that you might hate because of their behavior and what they do. I get that. If someone does something to you or to someone you love, or they do horrible things that damage other people, sure. I can get that you might not like those people. But if you hate people simply because of who they are, that has nothing to do with you. It's not hurting you. It's not impacting your life in any way. That's a problem. That's a problem. It's really hard to enjoy spending time with someone or love someone who hates people just because of who they are. That's really hard. So yeah, those are some ways that you can invest in yourself, or you can refuse. You could say, forget that. I refuse to invest in myself. I'm going to keep behaving in terrible ways because that's just who I am. Well, then you're going to spend the rest of your life wondering why no decent person wants to spend time with you. And that could be even friends. Why no one wants to fall in love with you or spend their life with you. Or you might fool somebody and you might get married, but you'll end up divorced in a few years. And I see people like this. They're on their third or fourth divorce, and I wonder why. I wonder why. Fix yourself, folks. Fix yourself. Be happy with yourself. Be healthy. Love yourself before you can love someone else. Take a hard look in the mirror. If you are suffering from this loneliness epidemic, stop blaming other people. That's the whole incel movement. It's ridiculous. Those little boys are fools. You don't blame the rest of the world because people don't want to date you. It's your problem. You got to accept personal responsibility. You got to grow up. And you have to keep investing in yourself to be an interesting individual, a healthy individual, and evolve into the best version of you that you can be. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck with pursuing the life of your dreams so you can be happier, healthier, and more fulfilled.